Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the QEM Heroes webinar series. I'm Christine Wood, and I serve as the Assistant Program Director for the Heroes Fellows Program at QEM. For more than 30 years, QEM has been a national catalyst for STEM education transformation and research capacity building. Currently, the QEM network serves nearly 900 colleges and universities and reaches more than 8,000 individuals nationwide. This webinar is part of the HEROES initiative. The HEROES program brings together researchers with experience in the federal government to lend their expertise and support to the STEM research and education communities. Our fellows are here to provide tools and tips for navigating the funding landscape, developing STEM programs and partnerships, and improving talent retention in in-demand fields. We hope this series promotes engagement with our HEROES fellows and provides valuable resources to our participants. During the webinar, we invite you to use the Q&A tool to ask questions. The webinar recordings and slides will be available in the QEM Resource Hub. By attending this webinar, you will be added to the QEM network and granted access to the Resource Hub. And now, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce our presenters today. Brad Lusk is a serial entrepreneur that has founded and served on the executive boards of multiple companies in the private and nonprofit sectors. Previously, he served as the principal investigator on a Phase 1 STTR project with the National Science Foundation, while serving as the CEO for a biotech firm called Prescient Technologies. He holds a PhD in biological design from Arizona State and has published several peer-reviewed articles on biotechnology, tech transfer, and equity in STEM. He has also served as a National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine Fellow at the Naval Research Lab, an American Association for the Advancement of Science Fellow at the U.S. Agency for International Development, and an Embassy Science Fellow with the U.S. Department of State. And Karen Ford Jackson is a grants and resource development professional with experience supporting federally funded education, innovation, and community development programs. She has held roles with the U.S. Department of Education as a management and program analyst, where she has provided guidance to grant oversight, technical assistance, data-informed support to strengthen program performance, compliance, and strategic impact. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to our presenters today.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. Karen, let me share the slide deck.
Excellent. Thank you. And good morning and welcome, everyone.
All right, let me make it full screen. Should be coming up. There you go. Is it
So,
working for
do,
you?
yes, do we have it in a slideshow view?
I just see the slide.
We don't have it in slideshow view at the moment. We
It's
have it.
not?
No.
No.
Oh, no. Hmm. What do I need to do? So you can still see all the things on the side.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it doing that? It looks perfect on my screen.
So there is a tab that says slideshow. If you
Yep.
hit that, that may,
Zoom slideshow.
Go to from beginning.
Hmm. Hmm. From
there,
beginning.
uh-huh, that icon right there.
Anything?
Not yet.
No, not yet. Hmm.
Weird. Yeah, it's full screen on my computer. It's so odd. Maybe, how do I do the thing where hmm, I guess we could just go like this. You want to just go like this while I try to figure it out? Like, let's just jump into the poll, I
Okay,
think. And
sounds
then while people are polling, we'll figure it out.
okay.
We have some comments in the chat, Brad. You're
Okay.
probably sharing the wrong screen. If you use dual monitors, you're on the wrong screen. You're sharing the screen that is not full screen on. Aha. No.
Okay. Application windows. Share that one.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yay.
Okay. Who wrote that in the
Well,
chat? Give them give them
yes,
Thank
something
you
who
to
wrote
to
it? Yeah,
Evangeline. Thank you
can
to Chris.
can we
yes.
mod them?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So today we will be talking about diversifying funding in STEM engagement and skilled technical workforce development. Um, so next slide, please. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we have a poll. Where do you search for funding? So we'll give you a few minutes to take a look at that and answer the poll.
And the poll is up. We'll give folks some time to answer. Okay. Here are the results.
And I see the results, and I see that most folks get their funding, they search for funding under the federal funding. The next highest was philanthropic and foundation. Third place was state and local workforce with the others 30, 40, and 10% respectively, corporate industry, partnership, earned revenue, and individual community giving. Thank you so much for that. Next slide, please. So, why diversify funding? So, one of the reasons you want your funding to be diversified, particularly today we're in a new age of funding opportunities. So, you always want to make sure that you're able to access funding to implement your project, your proposal, and or your program. So, one of the reasons is you want to reduce your financial volatility. It can increase your long-term sustainability. You can align your funding with your program components. You can strengthen your resilience during policy or market shifts, and you can scale your impact strategically. And your goal is really to build a balanced multi-stream funding portfolio. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some funding avenues. There's six core funding streams: federal funding, state and local workforce funds, corporate and industry partnerships, philanthropic and foundation support, earned revenue, individual and community given. And I will touch on a few of those today, and Brad will finish us out. Next slide, please. So, your funding sources for federal funds, you have the National Science Foundation, you have the U.S. Department of Labor, Department of Education, your Department of Energy, and the National Institute of Health. Within those areas, there's several programs that you can pull from. One of them in the National Science Foundation, you can look at the improving undergrad STEM education, which has a stream of funding opportunities. Under the Department of Labor, they have a workforce innovation and opportunities grant. In the Department of Education, there is the Perkins Career and Technology funding. Under the U.S. Department of Energy, they have funding for STEM and clean energy workforce. Under the National Institute of Health, There's a STEM pipeline as well as a biomedical workforce program. And I have also included a link for you that you can go to grants.gov, which can really give you the forecast of what's upcoming for grant opportunities. You also have your state and local workforce, your state workforce boards, the Economic Development Agency, state STEM councils, and community college systems. And your strategy here is to use your federal funds for infrastructure, your curriculum development, your evaluations, and your scaling. Partner with community colleges and or universities to strengthen your competitiveness. You want to align your proposals as much as you can with national priorities. Today, we're looking at things like AI, advanced manufacturing, clean energy, semiconductor workforce, and cybersecurity. When you look at your state and local workforce funding, they have workforce innovation and opportunities. You can position your program as addressing labor and local labor shortages. You can use the labor market data to demonstrate your return on your investment. So, those are some ways that you can use those funding streams and build your platform. Next slide, please. So, the other industries that you can take a look at, you want to target industries and foundations. Their corporate and industry partnerships, advanced manufacturing, utilities and energy, healthcare technology, semiconductor firms, aerospace, cybersecurity. And in those areas, you want to look at corporations that will invest heavily in your workforce force development. Companies like Intel, Lockheed Martin, Sims. Those are all areas that can help move the work that you're looking at. When you think about philanthropic and foundation support, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Lumina Foundation, the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and local and community foundations. And these are ways to just help you build out your pipeline of network. You're focusing on some of the access. Some populations that aren't as flooded as much. You want to package outcomes around mobility, your credential attainments, and your wage growth. You also can use your foundation dollars for innovation pilots. So that's another way to help you move the work that you want to move. Next slide, please. And now I will turn it over to Brad. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Okay, so today I really want to talk to you about ways that you can think about diversifying where it is you're getting grant money from or how it is you're getting money and the kinds of projects that you might be able to do in your community. And I really want to encourage us to think outside the box, like really outside the box thinking here. So I'm going to start with an example that I think is maybe a little more conventional, something that you might be used to thinking about from a research lab perspective. And then I'm going to get you into some examples that hopefully will spark some ideas in terms of thinking about ways that you can engage in your community around STEM, workforce development, and education and getting grants. And if you have any cool examples of things that you've done in your local community or even on the national level, the chat is open. So you might, as those are coming to mind as I'm going through this, you might post some in there because I would love to be inspired by you all. So I'm always looking for some new ideas. So the first one I want to share with you is again one that I think is maybe a little more conventional, but gets you thinking on maybe more of a localized level. So there is something called BidNet Direct, which is a private kind of organization. This isn't like a government thing. But a lot of government agencies, particularly local ones like cities and municipalities, post their calls for proposal within this database. And the basic account is free, and that basic account will give you like one regional focus. So I have a basic account in here for organization I work with, and that account gives me access to everyone within Arizona that's posting grants. So you think things like Maricopa County or Tucson, Phoenix, places like that. And so if you go in there, you can search by categories. In this particular case, I'm just showing you an example of Pima County. It's called Library Presenter Services. This came to my nonprofit organization that I also co-founded called Science to Earth. But basically, what this is looking for proposals for nonprofit organizations, institutes of higher education, LLCs, companies that are able to provide STEM development, like educational activities at libraries throughout Southern Arizona. And so, as you can see in here, it's for 27 different libraries with the option to renew for up to 4 years. And it basically is just a way for you to get some funding to go out and do STEM outreach and engagement and workforce development within your community. A cool feature about BidNet, a little bit different than grants.gov, you actually can see the names of every single company that has downloaded this call for proposals. And so you get an idea of who your competition might be, but also just who's interested, right? So for this one, there were 75 different companies that had downloaded this information when I looked at it. It doesn't mean that all of them are going to submit, but you get an idea for who's also interested in it. Also, who in your community is doing similar kinds of work. Because to me, my first thought isn't necessarily that these are my competitors. My first thought is like, these are the other people that are doing stuff that's related to what I'm doing. And even outside the context of this grant, I might be able to work with them in the future on something that's related. This is just an example of what one of those RFPs might look like. So this is for the one that I've been showing you. Um, um, for the library series. So you go in there and you can download it, and it looks fairly similar to what you would expect to get from a large federal agency. Anyway, it's just, as Karen was talking a little bit earlier, like there might be more different regional interests around workforce development or things like that that you can really cater your proposal submission to. To give you an example, in terms of thinking outside the box, so I was able to get funding through Maricopa County to do a series of videos for Maricopa County around vector-borne illnesses and how to reduce instances of mosquito bites. And this could be by eliminating places where mosquitoes can grow or applying certain kinds of repellents, things like that. But this was a way that we were able to procure funding for Maricopa County to do this kind of STEM engagement and community education around how they can think about reducing the instances of mosquito bites, right? Um, there are also like particular cities. This is another example from Arizona. So the city of Surprise has something called the Community Outreach Program. When I took a screenshot of this slide, their portal hadn't opened, but as of yesterday, their portal is now open. So what they do is they take calls for proposals, and this isn't just Surprise that does it. Obviously, it's cities all throughout the United States. And in this particular case, they have these $10,000 grants to do these small community engagements in Surprise to really just kind of beautify and grow the city's like ability to connect with its community partners, and so are the people in its community. And so, an example of something that I did there, so I pitched them this STEM workforce development thing where we called it sci-fi, and we got these STEAM professionals, so we also include artists in the conversation, to go to local cafes within the city of Surprise and give these live demonstrations with them about whatever science thing or art thing that they're geeking out about at the time. We recorded those and we turned them into an online video series so you can go in and you can learn about, Dr. Tucker and what he's doing with chemistry. And we also tried to we made these thematically like maybe more interesting. And so rather than saying you're going to come in and hear about chemistry, it was you're going to come in and you're going to learn about like how would we make a sustainable Death Star in Star Wars, right? And so now we're having conversations around chemistry and physics and engineering, but we're having them within the context of something that has broad public appeal. So we were able to get a huge amount of people out for this. And all this was funded by the city of Surprise. We're also, this is in Washington, D.C. now, And so there is another organization that I co-founded in DC called Climate Classes, another nonprofit. Every year we do an educational event where we invite members of the community out to a local farm called Common Good City Farm. They're a 501(c)(3). They're located right next to Howard University Hospital. And they are all about educating the public on how to do urban gardening, growing produce locally, and then cooking healthy meals for the community. So we invite members of the community out. We've gotten sponsorship from the Department of Energy and Environment in Washington, D.C., and also the Department of Public Works, DC DPW. And the way we were able to make this all come together is we got a group of people who were interested in the same thing. We started reaching out to these state level, departments and saying, "Hey, we're doing this. It's related to this thing you're doing around composting, this thing you're doing around eliminating food waste, this thing you're doing around trying to encourage like local businesses." And that those were messages that really resonated with these departments in Washington, D.C. So even the chef that you see in this photo, he was someone that was provided by the DC Department of Public Works to come out and lead this cooking class on this particular year. So just by recognizing these common like goals, ideas, and philosophies that we have on, how it is we want to like build sustainable communities, we were able to just connect directly with these departments and get funding and support for this kind of activity. Every year we're doing it. It's going to be our fifth year, I think, this year. Um, we were also able to leverage this into doing a educational video, so a documentary video for the University of the District of Columbia's PR Harris Food Hub, which is a community garden, so aquaponics, hydroponics space that they have in Washington, D.C. And the whole documentary is how do you make a local garden? How does all of this work in terms of aquaponics, hydroponics? And it just kind of takes you through that process um, of how this kind of like aquaculture situation works for these plants and how you can get more involved in this in the PR Harris Food Hub. Um, The next example, I'll take you back to Arizona. So there's Rio Salado College. So it's a smaller community college in Maricopa County. They have something called Rise Learners for Life or Rise Lifelong Learners. And this is all 65 plus community that has that comes in and does these kind of voluntary classes. So they get a itinerary of all the classes they can choose from, and then they choose to come to a class or not. And so by working with someone in the city of Surprise for their science and technology festival, they supported me to come out and basically do this STEM engagement with this 65 plus community at Rio Salado Community College. Finally, maybe like this is like tearing it all, all the way back. So you're in the lab, you're trying to think about how to diversify funding, and you're like, what, local funding sources are out there, what organizations are out there, what national ones are out there, and maybe you're just all out of ideas and you're fed up and you're tired of getting no's over and over and over again. Because I know how it is. I've been in a lab too, or in academic research space too. And so I came up with this idea, like, why don't I just come up with this catalyzed tab and just put this out in the community? Hey, if you have an idea for a project you want to do, just tell me what it is and we can work together. I can connect you with the right resources, or we can pull together our resources, and maybe we can just take this community grown idea. So a community member pitches the idea. I develop that idea with the community member, and then we ask the community if they want to fund that idea and make it become a thing, right? And so I had a community member come to me that was really into caving, or what most people might call spelunking, although anyone who goes in the caves and knows what they're doing would never call it spelunking. But anyway, so he goes into this cave, he finds all these interesting looking rock formations on the wall. He thinks that it might be caused by bacteria. this happens to be my research area. I used to research a lot like bacteria that either breathe or eat metal. And so I'm like, this is awesome. This seems like a community project. This person has no formal education in biology at all. So how is it that I can work with this community member to develop this proposal, package it, crowdsource funding for it, and then eventually acquire all the data that we need, analyze that data, and then publish that data. So can we do that, right? And so we were able to do that by, for the individual in the middle here, he's the guy who pitched the idea. He is from the Central Arizona Grotto, which is a big caving community through the National Speleological Society, which is the largest caving society in the world. Um, we were able to work with some undergraduate student volunteers from the Arizona State University Outdoors Club. So basically train them on proper sampling and collection and lab technique. And we worked with Arizona State University, the Biodesign Institute. That's the individual that's all the way on the left of this photo. Um, so we were able to train her on basically how to do scanning electron microscopy and some of the other microbial techniques in the lab. And of course, this was in partnership with the Grand Canyon Caverns, which was the cave, the private cave where all of these samples were collected. And so we were able to take that idea, bring together all of these groups and organizations that had to play a role, come to an agreement with all of them, crowdsource the funding for it, collect all the data, train all the students on how to collect the samples and the data, and eventually turn this into, the academic currency, right? So we were able to turn this into a peer-reviewed publication in the Journal of the National Speleological Society called the Journal of Cave and Karst Studies. And that individual that pitched the idea was able to be the first author on this paper, again, with no formal training in biology. Um, and this was picked up. It was picked up by local news. It was picked up by Fox 10. It was picked up by international news. So Channel 5 in the UK, which is owned by Paramount, did a small documentary piece on it. And then it was also picked up by PBS and NPR in Phoenix, or at least a cave conservation project that was related was picked up by them. So that's just getting you thinking about like ways that you can really try to think outside the box. I'm going to close with this, which is yet another like again, just now where the box has been totally like blown apart. And so uh, through the years of doing this kind of outreach, I've worked with a lot of different scientists, engineers, artists, things like that. And so for the last 15 years, I've been doing these presentations at comic book conventions that are themed, they're like science themed discussions um, around something that might be popping off in sci-fi, right? So you can think like, I'm about to do this on Friday. I'm going to give a panel on Frankenstein. The Bride is coming out. Guillermo del Toro just did a remake of Frankenstein. So people are thinking about this all the time. But like, what a great opportunity to start talking with people in the community about things like synthetic biology or AI and how these might be like modern day Frankenstein's monsters or Frankenstein's creations, right? And so I've been doing that for about 15 years. I've been doing it now with DC Awesome Con for about five. And now we're in active discussions with large philanthropic organizations about potentially sponsoring more of the scientists and engineers and artists that do these panels to go to a larger amount of comic book conventions around the United States because their goals are very aligned with ours in the sense that we want to get people in the community engaged in this discussion and this narrative around science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So again, it's just kind of a really unconventional way to think about how it is you could start to get funding to do these kinds of STEM engagement and workforce development, maybe in extremely unconventional places where you wouldn't necessarily expect it to happen. So I'll close there. Again, you have a bunch of QR codes here. If you want to learn from more of the QEM fellows or experience more of our events like this one, we have a link for the QEM events page. If you want to see all of the heroes, all the STEM heroes that are working now, go to the STEM Heroes webpage. There's a list of all of us on there. Please feel free to poke and bug any one of us that you think has a background that looks of interest to you. We would love to help you out with some consulting in terms of how it is you can do more workforce development. And then finally, let us know how much you loved us or hated us with the webinar feedback form on the bottom. And of course, Karen and my email addresses are on the slide, so you can just contact us directly if you want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, folks. Let's open the floor for some questions. You have the Q&A box as one option. We have the chat open, and you can raise your hand to be taken off mute. There's one comment for you or question in the chat, Brad. It's kind of a joke, but it says, "Sweet tux, Brad. Did you have the cane too?"
No, I didn't have the cane. I almost wore the tux today, actually, because I'm going to be wearing it in just a few days, but I'd not. Yeah, I know. I'm still thinking about getting that cane.
I guess I have a question. It relates back to some of what Karen presented at the beginning. And I wonder about what are some of the challenges and trade-offs of diversifying your funding when you're trying to work with multiple sources like federal grants and foundation grants. What are the different contingencies and things to consider when you're pursuing diverse sources of funding that may have different rules and regulations around direct costs, indirect costs, things like that to support the work you're doing at your institution?
Okay, so I'll take some of that. So I think it's important that whoever the project director is, that they make sure that they follow up with whoever their program officer is for the federal dollars, because they will keep them in line with all of that. They will give them all the cost principles. They will give them all the information that they need to keep them in line with what their marching orders are from that perspective. In terms of other dollars, they would use those differently when they are working with their federal grants. They can use those to offset and pay for other things. So it's just knowing what you can and can't do with those federal dollars because there is guidance. They will have all kinds of webinars and things to explain to them how to do that work. And again, their program officer is the first line of defense to ensure that they're using those dollars appropriately. And then the other set of funding, they just need to be mindful of how that can be implemented with the program as well.
Mhm. And some questions in the Q&A. So, is there enough money in these kinds of outreach efforts to fund soft money funded personnel? Or is this more the kind of thing that primarily those in faculty roles can do?
Uh, I'm not sure who that's uh sent to, but I mean, so I can answer it. So, um, oh, I suck. Would like okay, no. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted by things that are popping up on my window. Yeah, so I'll say, uh, in terms of me having a faculty role, like I taught for 2 semesters, and most of this was not done during the time that I was actually in a faculty role. So I would say absolutely in terms of the outreach stuff that I've been doing, it had very little, if anything, to do with having a faculty role. Um, in terms of the amount of money that these things provide, generally at the local level, you're not looking at, I'm going to say generally because not always, but you're not looking at like the multi-million dollar like National Science Foundation grants or things like that. So you're definitely going to be much more, you're going to have to be much more conservative and conscientious with your resources when you're looking for funding in these smaller amounts. And I understand there's always that cost benefit analysis that you have to think of in terms of where do you allocate money to try to pull in grant dollars. For me, it's been, I don't want to say easier because it takes a lot of work, but it's not necessarily it's not necessarily the same kind of work as applying for an NSF grant to go out and just talk directly with people in the community at organizations that may potentially sponsor an event. And so generally, once you can make those connections and you have this kind of shared goal, right? Those projects are much more likely to happen, but they're generally not at like the, $1 million level. And so you have to be more conscientious of the amount of resources you have and how it is you're allocating those resources to get projects done. Karen, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think you answered it perfectly. There was another question, how how do you think of these kinds of out of the box partnerships and outreach? And for that one, I'm going to answer a portion and then I'm going to let Brad finish. I think it depends on what your project is. Because if you decide that you're going to do a project, say you're doing a project about um, tea, how you're going to use tea to cure something, I would just do a Google search and see if there's anybody else doing that same kind of thing. And then look at your philanthropic organizations and foundations and see if any of them are interested in that kind of work. So you kind of have to do a little bit of homework and figure out what you want to do, and then do some searches to figure out who you think could best fund that and who you think would be interested in whatever your proposal or project is. And Brad, I'll let you finish out.
Yeah, I would just say probably, I mean, it sounds very cliche, but literally like your imagination is your only limitation, right? So if you come up with an idea and you think that that idea might have traction, or Um, another thing that I think about all the time is anytime I'm in a room full of people, there's like this huge breadth and depth of knowledge that I know nothing about. And I'm really just like one conversation away from learning about some completely new topic that I've never heard of that might be of interest to even myself just for that moment, but could be of interest to my community in the space that I'm in. And so it's oftentimes just learning from members of my community or the teams that I end up putting myself around. So I do a lot of like intentional serendipity. I don't know how else to describe it, but I put myself in situations where the potential for serendipity is much higher because I'm not like sitting at my house watching Netflix. I'm out like talking to people in the community. Um, and so that's just kind of like where like one idea or one thing that I hear might spark an idea, or there might be an idea I have that I share with someone that then is changed a little bit. And then all of a sudden there's like this common thread that goes across multiple people and multiple organizations that kind of manifests themselves in the projects that are now in 2 weeks, I'm going to be at a environmental film festival in Washington, D.C., talking about sustainable agriculture at a movie screening around seed preservation. And this happened from, just like talking to a few people in the community, and now all of a sudden, like I'm going to be at this film festival tabling and with these other organizations that I work with. So like never doubt the value and importance of just a conversation with anyone, because you never know where it's going to go, right? And then all of a sudden, like you have this funded project that you're doing that's really relevant to your community.
Yeah, we still have lots of times for questions. So if you'd like to come off mute, click raise hand. You can use the Q&A box as well. Any comments? We can have the chat open as well.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about some of your experiences too. Um, Maybe some ideas that you've all had or tried or would like to try. That'd be cool.
Greg, you're off mute.
Brad, I was wondering if you had any experience working with kids in some of these things and possibly even employing them and paying them, and if there was any lessons in that.
Working with kids, yes. Employing them in terms of paying them, no. But yeah, so I worked with Title I fifth grade elementary school students in Mesa, Phoenix, and Tempe for over 10 years. Um, and just to kind of let everyone know, Title uh, I think it still means, at least it meant at least half the school was on free or reduced lunches. I'm not sure if that percentage has changed, but generally the schools I was working with, at least they were like 90 to 98% of the student population was on free or reduced lunches. So these were schools that were really like kind of underfunded and under-resourced. And so basically by forming this, it was similar thing. Like, so we formed a group of people that were interested in this kind of engagement. And then we reached out to elementary schools and we worked with 17 different elementary schools in the Phoenix, Mesa, Tempe area. And we would essentially have people come out to those schools and do what we called a day camp. But they would take over the entire fifth grade class. So between the four classes at the school, we'd take over all of them. We'd have the students rotate between different workshops that we had come up with, and they would learn about something that they could do in terms of a potential career, or just something that they might find passion in as eventually people who are going to be fully self-actualized beings. And so we would take over the class, we'd have them do these workshops, and we also would engage with them in something called future talks, where we would engage with the fifth graders in, communication around, what is it you might want to do someday? What is it you care about doing? And then how is it you could get there? And we would have conversations around how would you fund college, whether it be through a grant or military service or scholarships, like things like that, and really get them thinking about those kinds of things. And then we would crowdsource, so we would solicit donations from members of the community, and we would take a fifth grade class to summer camp completely free to them every year. And so we would do like STEM camps, like one was forensics camp, and we had a crime, and the students had to solve the crime by learning how to do chromatography and all these different things over 3 days. Um, and so, yeah, all of that was, I mean, we were able to get it funded every year. We were able to get volunteers to do it every year. Um, and I did it long enough to where I had fifth graders, fifth graders that I took to big camp eventually come to Arizona State University as undergrads and join the organization that it was that went to their school all those years ago to encourage them to come to college. Um, I hope that answers your question.
That's a really cool answer.
Yeah, I wish I could pay, fifth graders to do stuff. That'd be fun. I'm sure
Oh,
they would appreciate it too.
when I said paying kids, I wasn't thinking fifth graders. I was thinking more like high school kids.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a yeah. So I was this was through that's thank you for rephrasing that. Yeah. So um when I was at the Biodesign Institute, we were able to get I can't remember which foundation it was now. Um Goodness. Anyway, so we were able to get high school students to come into the lab to do training, and we were able to get them summer stipends to do that. And so actually a few of my publications have one of them has a high school student on it for sure, and the other one, I think the high school student ended up either acknowledged or as an author. But anyway, so we were not only able to bring these high school students in and get them training and a stipend, but we were able to get them a publication too, which was really cool.
I think you have paid kids then, Brad. Well done.
We have another question in the Q&A. Can you fill in the gap between I had a conversation with something about X or with someone about X and I got funded to do Y locally? Where does it go from a conversation where you see some overlaps? How do you know how invested the other party is in seriously pursuing the idea? How do you know what the right place is to apply for the smaller local dollars? Are there things you look for to assess what's viable and what isn't?
I mean, I'll answer it, but I want to give Karen an opportunity to chime in because I've talked so
I'm
much.
I'm gonna let Brad go ahead and take that one.
Okay. Um, yeah, this is where definitely if you're coming from an academic mindset, as I have, because I've gone through academia, this is definitely like a shift in that mindset. This gets back to maybe the last one of these I gave, which was thinking about STTR, SBIR grants and the difference in mindset in terms of what it is you need to accomplish with this grant in terms of like getting a technology that's actually that people care about. And the way you find out if people actually care about it is by talking to them rather than just coming up with a cool grant, and then at the end you give something over to the NIH or the NSF and they're like, oh, great, they did this thing and it's cool and whatever. And so my point is like you can have a conversation with someone in a community about something that they think is important, but now you need to engage in the other members within your community. This could be organizations, it could be other people that you know are in organizations to see if they actually care about that thing. Because oftentimes, like, there are these ideas and people don't care about it, at least at the level where they want to fund it. And if they don't, you have two options, or you probably have more than two, but two that come to my mind is you can either kind of, forget about getting that thing funded. And maybe it's like a cool thing that the two of you can connect on and relate to. Or two, maybe you can think about ways that you form a catalyzed tab and just get it funded yourself because you're like stubborn. You're like, no, there's going to be someone out there who cares, right? That really comes down to like, how much do I want to push this thing? But if you do find something where, X person is interested and you want to get it funded locally, what's a tangible example that I could give you? I think around the cooking demos at the farm. Maybe that's a great one where it's like, hey, I think that I like growing my own lion's mane mushrooms. I like cooking a lot. I like brewing kombucha, like all these kinds of things. And so um, I think it'd be really interested to think about how we can build a community space around local farming and gardening. Who else cares about that? Well, there are local farms and gardens in Washington, D.C. They might care about it. I was in a different organization that had a bunch of people in it that were really interested in how to think about climate policy, but not all of them want to think about policy all the time. And so one of the people from that organization came to me from the climate policy organization, and they're like, what if we form an organization that's just about like local sustainable action we can take? Okay, we can form that organization. We can go talk to this farm. We can see if that farm's interested. Not all of them said yes. Some of them just didn't respond because they're so busy, but at least one of them did. They were very interested in it. Okay, now we need to find a local chef. So let's talk to this other organization, the policy organization. Does anyone there know a local chef that might be interested? Yes, they do. How does that chef know we're serious? Well, now we've teamed up with this local farm and we've started this organization to do it. And so you can see how this credibility, like it just kind of builds as you get enough people at the table that care about the saying and know what it is they're doing. So now you have a chef, you have a farm, and you have a nonprofit organization. Now you can start going to the District of Columbia, whether it's DOEE or DCD, Department of Public Works, and you could say, hey, this is the event we're doing, and we see that you really care about sustainable agriculture, building a local community and businesses around agriculture, minimizing food waste, composting, all of these things. Is an event like this something that you would be interested in endorsing? And they're like, absolutely. How do you find the people that work at those organizations? So they might be someone that you already know through someone that you know through the network that you've already developed, or it could just be a cold email. Cold emails work for us fairly often, actually, but generally it's because we have enough people in our network that we've talked to. Again, this was all just built from the ground up in terms of forming this network, just by going out and talking to people about what it is they care about and then figuring out if they're connected to the thing that's connected to the thing that's connected to the thing. Before you know it, you have this event that happens every year that has this sponsorship from um, Washington, organizations at Washington, D.C., other for-profit organizations, other nonprofit organizations, multiple farms, to now this year we're thinking about doing a full day workshop with all of these individuals. Um, so it does take a little bit of believing and it does take a little bit of faith, but people are problem solvers. And if you get me 50 people in a room, I could probably solve just about any issue in the entire world, or at least have an idea of how I could solve that issue because people are dynamic and know a lot of stuff, and you just have to trust the process sometimes.
And we have a few more minutes for questions, conversation. And we have a question in the Q&A. Oh, just a thank you. You're welcome. Well, this might be a good transition time for all of us, so everybody can get to their next event on time. I want to thank Brad and Karen for a really engaging conversation. Again, we encourage you to reach out to the fellows and peep our upcoming webinars so that you can sign up and learn more from us. And always check out the Heroes project page, which we link to in the QR codes, so you can connect with Heroes Fellows one-on-one. So thank you so much, and we wish you a great day. See you soon in an upcoming webinar.